Welcome to this explainer. If you've spent any time around a brand new human being, you've definitely witnessed it. The full-on, red-faced, ear-piercing meltdown. It's the kind of screaming that triggers deep panic in our brains. But then, you look closely at their little face and you notice something incredibly strange. Their cheeks are completely dry. There's literally not a single tear in sight. It's a real panic moment for parents. But today, we're going to unravel the fascinating science behind this weird little mystery together. Okay, let's dive into this. Why on earth is this screaming baby not shedding a single tear? It's that central mystery that sends countless new parents rushing to Google at 2 in the morning. It feels wrong, doesn't it? We associate crying so heavily with tears that when they're missing, it feels like a massive warning sign. But looking into the research, it turns out we can totally alleviate that anxiety, because what we're actually witnessing here is a marvel of human biology. Section 1, the biology of baby tears. Let's take a look at the eyes. So there's a really important difference to understand here between two very distinct types of tears. Believe it or not, babies actually do make tears right from day one, but they're strictly making what we call basal tears. Think of this as just a thin, constant lubricating film that keeps their eyes from drying out. What they aren't making quite yet are emotional tears, those visible salty drops that roll down the face during a meltdown. Your baby's eyes are perfectly healthy and moist, they just haven't unlocked the emotional waterworks yet. And the reason for this comes down to a tiny piece of anatomy called the lacrimal gland. Basically, this is the body's tear factory. It sits right up there under the bone of the eyebrow. Now, this gland is absolutely present at birth, but it simply isn't mature enough to pump out high volumes of fluid yet. It's doing exactly what it needs to do to keep the eyes safe, but it hasn't ramped up production to handle a full emotional overflow. Plus, even if that factory were producing at full capacity, we have a bit of a plumbing issue. In a lot of newborns, the tear ducts are still partially covered by this very thin membrane, so all the mechanical plumbing is there, right? It just needs a little time to fully open up and start flowing. For most babies, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks for this membrane to open and for the system to really clear out. Section 2. The timeline of tears. When can caregivers actually expect them? Let's move to and see how this timeline builds. At birth, as we established, you're getting dry, tearless cries. Then, between 2 to 4 weeks of age, those lacrimal glands start to wake up and significantly ramp up their fluid production. You might actually catch a tiny glisten during a really hard cry. And finally, somewhere between 1 and 3 months of age, the dam breaks. Visible, cheek-streaking tears will finally appear. That's your standard, healthy progression. But there is an exception to keep in mind here. If you have a premature baby, their timeline is going to be delayed. Studies show that a preemie's tear production directly correlates with their birth weight and gestational age. Because they're on a slightly slower biological clock, their tear factories might just take a few extra weeks to mature, which is entirely normal for their unique developmental stage. Section 3, blocked ducts and infections. Take a look at this number, 6%. This is the percentage of newborns who experience something called dacryostenosis. In plain English, that's a blocked tear duct. Because the plumbing is so incredibly tiny and new, sometimes a duct just gets clogged. When this happens, you'll actually see pooling tears and a watery eye, even when the baby is perfectly happy and not crying at all. It is absolutely crucial to draw a sharp, clear distinction between a simple blocked duct and an actual infection, like pink eye. A blocked tear duct gives you a watery eye, maybe some clear mucus, a bit of mild crusting. It almost always resolves on its own within 6 to 8 months, and you can just gently clean it at home with a cotton swab and some sterile, boiled then cooled water. But an infection? That looks angry. We're talking redness, swelling of the eyelid, and yellow or green pus. If you see those symptoms, that is when you immediately call the pediatrician. Section 4, the danger of dehydration. A serious warning. Now, we have a critical scannable checklist to keep in mind. If your baby was previously making real, visible tears and suddenly stops, they might be dehydrated. You need to look for these accompanying red flags. Less than 6 wet diapers a day, dry mouth and lips, a sunken soft spot or fontanelle on their head, unusual lethargy, or a fast breathing and heart rate. If you see a sudden lack of tears paired with any of these, it's an immediate medical emergency. So the crucial point is why this happens so incredibly fast. Babies aren't just miniature adults. They can dangerously dehydrate within just 24 hours. The biological reason is that they have a remarkably large body surface area relative to their overall weight. This means fluid literally evaporates from their skin much faster than it does in an older child or adult. They lose fluid quickly, and they need it replaced constantly. To help gauge exactly what they need, take a look at this practical guideline based on Dutch pediatric data. A baby between 0 and 3 months needs about 150 milliliters of fluid per kilogram of their body weight every single day. As they grow, that per kilo requirement actually drops slightly. It's amazing how precise these numbers are, but knowing them helps caregivers ensure those little tear factories stay properly hydrated. And if your baby gets sick with a fever or diarrhea and falls behind, doctors might advise oral rehydration solutions, or ORS, to quickly replace lost salts and sugars. Section 5. Why do humans cry? Zooming out to the evolution of tears. Charles Darwin, obviously one of the greatest scientists in human history, famously stated, "Emotional tears are purposeless." He understood evolution brilliantly, but when it came to humans sobbing, he couldn't find a reason for it. He viewed it as a total biological oddity that offered zero survival advantage. But digging into modern science, it turns out we've actually proven Darwin completely wrong on this front. To understand why, let's break down the 3 biological classifications of tears. 1. Basal tears, for constant lubrication. 2. Reflex tears, which act as an emergency rinse when you get dust or maybe an onion's chemicals in your eye. Other animals have these first 2. But number 3, psychic or emotional tears, that deep weeping response to strong feelings, that is unique only to humans. It's a bizarre, exclusively human evolutionary trait. No other animal sheds tears from sadness or joy. And this brilliantly illustrates the evolutionary genius behind it. Emotional tears are chemically different from the tears you shed when you chop an onion. They actually have a much higher protein content. This makes them thick and viscous. Why does that matter? Because it means they stick to the skin and roll down the face very slowly. Our bodies literally evolved to make sure our emotional tears stay visible on our faces for as long as humanly possible. Dutch clinical psychology professor Ad Vingerhoots proposed an incredibly elegant theory for this. He argues that crying is the ultimate white flag of surrender. Think about early prehistoric humans. Screaming in distress, that would alert deadly predators. But crying is an honest, quiet, visual signal of vulnerability. It silently tells your community, hey, I'm helpless, I need support. It builds deep trust, empathy, and social connectedness. Crying wasn't purposeless at all. It was the very glue that helped early human communities survive, bond, and care for each other. Which leaves us with this final, fascinating thought. We started with a frustrated parent and a dry-eyed newborn, and we zoomed all the way out to the very survival of our species. So if our supposedly purposeless emotional tears are actually the evolutionary foundation of human empathy and community, what other strange quirks of our biology are secretly holding us all together? I highly encourage you to keep exploring the brilliant, hidden mechanics of the human body. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.